Good day, welcome to Music Motors. Welcome to something a little different. This is the 2020 Honda E, the fully electric, fully mind-bending Honda E. Now the Honda E has a 35.5 kilowatt hour battery pack and effectively produces either 134 brake horsepower or 151 brake horsepower. Both variants produce 315 Newton meters of torque, and realistically you can reach 62 miles an hour in either 9 seconds or 8 seconds depending which variant you go for. Price is also a factor. Base prices are £27,000 with an advance like this costing £29,700. Now with a realistic 120 mile range combined with the fact that 35.5 kilowatt hour battery pack, it means that this gets 177 miles to the gallon in comparison. It's also filled with technology, but it's also a new platform from the ground up for Honda, rear wheel drive. So in this episode of Music Motors, I'm putting the Honda E to the test, finding out just what it's made of, what it's capable of, and bringing you along for the journey. So starting with the outside, this is obviously something different. This, in fact, to me, is probably the first production car that's come out which actually looks like the prototype. The front end, really retro and cool, reminiscent of old school 70s, 80s design language. I really like it. Now, some people do have this feeling of it's a little snout-nosed. And within reason, I see where they're coming from. But I love it. The front end's really cool. The charging scoop on the front, or the intake scoop as everyone keeps thinking it is, the charging port on the front, really, really nice. It stands out, but equally looks really cool. Now, when you move from that front to the side profile, that side profile is prominent and very unique. Now, the wheels, 17-inch diamond cut alloys, look awesome. And I mean, these are a really lovely retro design, but equally not OTT, not out there, not too different. But the side profile is very much Honda, and makes this Honda E really stand out. It's a very cool aesthetic with pop-out door handles on the front, which make a bit of a clunk when they come out, but it gives you confidence in their build quality. And really cool, almost, shall we say, mid-2000s Alfa Romeo rear door handles that kind of sunk into the door itself. Really cool, really like it. And the back end, cute, bubbly, rounded, retro. This car just aesthetically is really pleasing. It's a really epic looking thing. And yet it's also a bit of a Marmite looking thing, because the general responses I get are either, wow, that's incredible, wow, what is it? Or wow, I don't like it. It is a real for anyone type of car, and generally the people who don't know what it is, when they spend a little bit of time looking at it, they do like it in the end. It is a weird looking thing, but for me it is such a cool looking thing. This one is finished in modern steel metallic, which is a lovely dark silver metallic, and for me it is the only colour, unless you were going to go for a really bright colour like green or yellow, the only colour you could have one of these in. You couldn't go for black and you couldn't really go for white. This just finishes, seals the deal for me from an aesthetics point of view. Everyday range when it's not around town, and motorways especially, can be a little bit difficult with electric vehicles. So this is my first ever driving the car, because I'm just picking it up from Honda, and I'm going to see just how realistic the range is. It says 109 miles, and when I get to my destination we'll find out whether or not that was accurate, or ish, accurate-ish, and then how well it did on the motorway, how comfortable it was, what the tech's like, etc, etc. A pleasant 55.8 miles later, I've arrived. Now, at no point really did I go anywhere near 70. I tended to stick to 60 as much as I could. I don't have heating on because it's not that cold, and I don't need the aircon on because it's not that hot. It's good medium temperature. So what I've averaged is 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour, and I've got a 55-mile realistic range left, where by my maths for the miles that I've covered, I should have 53.2. So the range is relatively accurate. Good. When it comes to sitting at 60 miles an hour, this is actually really smooth, really comfortable. The sound system's really good. Visibility takes a little bit of getting used to, but is by no means bad. The seats are really comfy. It is surprisingly good at lapping up miles, and the time's just kind of passed. So really, that's quite impressive considering this is sold as a city car. The thing that really surprised me was when I went from that really cool exterior to the really cool interior. Now, some people think this is a bit retro and dated, but I love it. Two 12-inch displays to give you all the information you could possibly want, on top of the fact that you've then got a TFT display in front of you, giving you even more driver assistance services. Your wing mirrors on the outside, those are just cameras, but those cameras relay into two screens here and here, which at the beginning are really a little bit trippy, a little bit weird to get used to, but you very quickly adapt. Now inside it really shouts quality, a real quality build. The steering wheel's this nice new design that Honda are using. The seats are lovely and comfortable. Now don't get me wrong, they're not massively holding, they're not sporty seats, but they are very comfortable. They are heated, and you could see yourself spending a lot of time in them. Around town, these are great to be in, especially if you're going to have a longer commute. Now up front, you do have loads and loads of room. Everything's at your fingertips, especially from a driver point of view, and the sound system's really, really incredibly good. You can also press a button and have a fish tank at the front if you're that way inclined. When you get to your passenger here, they can have whatever they want in front of them, because this display is completely switchable. They could say, I'm going to set the sat nav up for you and pass it over to you, and then I'm going to connect on Apple CarPlay and choose what songs I want. Completely doable and absolutely crazy to think. Rear legroom is reasonable depending on the height of the front seat passengers. Now, if you have taller people in the front, then it goes without saying the back space is going to be a little bit more limited, but it's not terrible considering there's batteries going on under here. It's pretty impressive. The boot space really then is the only place that I feel let down by with this car, only because it could have had a bit more space. They could have utilised space slightly differently, made it so you had a frunk and a trunk. But unfortunately, all you get is a, pretty small trunk. By all means, it would be able to take your weekly shop, but if you're thinking of going a long distance with the family, it's not made for that. But then again, this is a city car. This is made to only go really around town. Around town, as I say, it's very easy to drive. The lock is phenomenal. Like, the lock on this is like London Taxi. It's absolutely incredible. The visibility is very good, and the sound quality, it just isn't overwhelming. It's quiet. But that quietness continues when you get up to 70 miles an hour. And equally, it feels composed, doesn't get too affected by wind, which is hugely impressive. When you consider the fact that this was and still is made to be a city car, the fact that it can be so composed and at home on the motorway is pretty epic. And from that comfort point of view, at 70 miles an hour, you don't feel any different than you did at 30, 20, 40 miles an hour. Constantly feels composed, constantly feels really, really good. Interior quality, I like the wood parts. I like the fact that these seats are a bit more old school. And I like the fact that you can plug your Xbox in or your laptop, HDMI input and a wall socket with a 230 or 220 volt inverter. Absolute madness, which everyone now seems to be doing. Here's my version of it. Step 1, take games console of your choice. Step 2, plug in. Well, step 3 is playtime. The final step is just play. Badly. Everything's at your fingertips. Everything's really easy to navigate and use. Self-park. This is just a well-equipped car, especially from that inside point of view. Town range. Now, obviously, it will depend entirely on how much traffic you get, but within reason, town range is quite important, because if it says it gets 10 miles, or you say you have 10 miles of range, and then suddenly you only achieve 4, well then why didn't it tell you it only had 4? And within reason, an electric car should be able to guess you know, even with heavy traffic, I should be getting this. So I'm leaving with 97% charge, which means mileage-wise, once it's booted up, that means I've got 97 miles of range. Because I've been driving this around town and it's averaging 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. So I want to know, is that 97 miles going to be accurate? So I've got 158.7 miles on my trip. I'm going to drive a distance, get there, figure out what I should have used, and figure out what's remaining. Now let's hope this is relatively accurate, because in an electric car, accuracy is very important. Because if it's not accurate and you think I've got 10 miles and it says I got 11, but you only achieve 5, you're running out before you can get somewhere to charge. The range actually went up. Obviously I left with 97 miles and 97% of charge. I've arrived 9 miles later with 103 miles and 92% charge. So that's a little confusing to work out, but the Honda E Advance, which this is, has a total capacity of 35.5 kilowatt hours. So if we say 100% is 35.5 kilowatt hours, 35.5 divided by 100 times by 5%, because I've used 5%, which gives me 1.775 kilowatt hours. That also means that I've not even used 2 kilowatt hours to go 9 miles. But let's round this up, let's make it easier. It's using nothing around town. It's stupidly electrically efficient around town. But if I just average that now, when I charged up at Instavolt as I left, that was 35p per kilowatt hour. So to go those, let's say the 10 miles, 9 miles even, let's base it on that, 9 miles, it costs 62p to go 9 miles. If I divide that by 9, it's 0.06. So 6p per mile, which is mad. If I then times that by 100, because we're getting close to a gallon of fuel there. So effectively, this has got 100 miles to the gallon around town. And when it comes to that town driving, visibility is really good. I'm totally used to the mirrors now, or lack of. Steering feels really nice. It's very comfortable. It's very quiet. It's got nip where you need it. And the lock is just phenomenal. So when you consider the fact that this is so capable around town, so comfortable, and has ridiculous economy returns, as it were, you can say Honda have absolutely hit this on the head.
Now when we talk performance, 134 horsepower or 151, 315 newton meters of torque, regardless of which variant you go for, 100 mile an hour top speed in both of them, and obviously the lower output has the 9 second to 62, whilst the faster one has the 8 second. 0 to 30 though is really substantial because it's an electric car, there is no lag, you put your foot down and you're pinned in your seat for a couple of seconds. It's really, really good. You can kind of drift this round corners because it's got so much torque. It's brilliant fun, it feels really composed. Now by no means is this a sports car. By all means there's this grip to the floor and hold on and not want to let go. Now that 35.5 kilowatt hour battery pack means that within reason, and WLTP says you're going to get at least 125 miles. What I found is that around town with everything on, you never see less than 100 miles. So when you put that into my estimations, it works out at like 125 miles to the gallon, where Honda are claiming that if you get the perfect run, it's 177 miles to the gallon. Bear that in mind that this car only costs £250 a month with a reasonable deposit. This is a pretty good electric car. The range does go down when you go above 60, 65 miles an hour, so you do want to keep that in mind when you're driving, just to ensure that it's not going to go down faster than that 100% marker. You don't want to be covering 2 miles and using 4 miles or 4% of charge, because you'll run out pretty quick. This feels like a nice and engaged car to drive, and I really didn't think I'd say that, because this is a weird one. This is not what you expect from Honda. Not that I'm criticising Honda, but the infotainment was historically pretty bad, and this is incredible.
Historically, their hybrids were a little bit dull to drive, and this fully electric totally isn't. And historically, their small city cars were pretty appalling to look at. No offense, but the Honda Jazz for me has always been terrible. But yet this is so cool. I love how this looks. I love how comfortable the interior is, and I absolutely adore how this drives. And okay, yeah, you can get electric cars with bigger range, but you're going to be paying a lot more money. £27,000 on the road for a standard E, 29,700 for an Advance. Can you really quibble at that? Considering how cool this is and the amount of technology you get and the way this drives and the way this performs, can you really quibble at that? I honestly don't think so. This is an incredible effort by Honda. The 2020 Honda E is fantastic and is not what I was expecting from them in the slightest. It's blown my mind and changed my perception of the small city car that Honda makes. Maybe in the future, people won't think the Honda Jazz, they'll think the Honda E. Or maybe the Honda Jazz will go fully electric and the Honda E will always be the forward-thinking, prototype-looking, incredible machine that it is.